Hi boys and girls, in this video we are going to start learning how to tell time. Now many of you have probably been telling time for a while on what we call a digital clock. And a digital clock is one that kind of looks like this, and it has numbers written on the clock. So for example, if it were 3 o'clock, we would have on our digital clock, we would have the 3 and then 2 zeros here for 3 o'clock. And I know a lot of you know how to tell time on a digital clock. Well, today, not only am I going to help you get really good at telling time on a digital clock, but I'm also going to work with you on an analog clock, which is the clock like we have on the wall in our classroom that has the hands that move around and around. And I know some of you are starting to get good at telling time on those clocks, but I'm going to make sure we master it. Okay, so in our math books, we are actually going to be working in chapter 15 this week. And if you open up to the first page in chapter 15, which is this lesson 15-1, it begins on 563. So if you open up to page 563, and we will do our little lesson first, and then we can work through some of the problems. Okay, so I'm going to be going over these pages. I've got my clock over here that I will do with you. I also will be doing some things on my digital clock. I might show it down here, or I might flash it over here just so that you can see it better. So as we work through, we'll kind of see how it's going to work best. This is my first time teaching time to a computer instead of in a classroom, so we're going to work together to get good at it. All right, so over here at the top of this page, it says hour, and we are going to be telling time to the hour. Okay, so it says the clock shows Abby's dinner time. What are 2 ways to write this time? So if you look on this clock, we have, this is what we call the analog clock, and that's what this clock is here, an analog clock. And you'll notice it has 2 different hands, and we call these hands on a clock. On this clock, they kind of look like lines. There's the blue one and the red one, and here I have a blue one and a red one as well. Now, on a lot of clocks, they're not blue and red, they're just black. But when we're learning on a learning clock, we color code them so it helps us remember which one means the hour and which one means the minute. Now, the longer hand here, whoa, that stretches way out past the red numbers to these blue numbers on the outside, this one is called the minute hand. And one way that I use for myself that helps me remember that that long hand is the minute hand is that minutes go quicker than hours, right? A minute is a quick 60 seconds, where an hour is a lot longer. And so if someone had really long legs, they could run much faster. So our minute hand flies around our clock very quickly because a minute is quicker than an hour. So I put that in my brain. So our blue hand is our minute hand, and it's longer because longer legs run faster, like minutes. Okay, so in this book and while we're working, if you see the blue hands, you know that they are minute hands. But if you're looking at a clock where they're both black, you know that the longer one is the minute hand. Okay, so as this minute hand moves around the clock, it will point to how many minutes past the hour it is. So for example, if it was 1:05, then it would be the hour would be 1, and then the minute hand would be pointing to the minute, which is the blue, where it says 5. Okay, so right now just know that the long hand is the minute hand. Now this shorter hand, the red hand, that is our hour hand, and that is the hand that is going to point to the hour that we are in. And by hour, I mean 1 o'clock hour, 2 o'clock hour, 3 o'clock hour, 4 o'clock hour, and so on and so on and so on. On these clocks, that hour hand will be red. And another good way to remember which one is the long or, minute hand and which is the hour hand, because the hour hand has shorter legs, it takes longer for him to walk around that clock. So the hour hand moves slower and hours are longer. Okay, so now that we know that, we can look back over here. It says our minute hand is the long hand. It tells us the minutes. And the hour hand is the short hand, and it tells us the hours. So on this clock, the minute hand is on 12, and that's what we have here on this clock. Our minute hand is on the 12. Our minute hand lays right on top of the 12 when it is on the hour. Okay. In reality, if you look, it's actually pointing up to the numbers on top of the 12. But when it's laying directly on the 12, we know that it is on the hour. And we say o'clock when it's on the hour. So when your minute hand is pointing straight up over that 12, we say o'clock. So right now, this clock says 1 o'clock. And if we move around, now we're at 2 o'clock. And we could keep going. We get 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And now we can make ours look like the clock in our book, where the red is pointing to the 6, so our hour is 6. And the blue is pointing on top of the 12, which means it's on the hour where we say o'clock. So this clock says 6 o'clock. And looking here, we have 6 o'clock. Another way to show 6 o'clock would be on our digital clock. We would have 6 o'clock. And I can show that here, down if you can see it. Okay, so this clock says 6 o'clock. This clock over here says 6 o'clock, and both of these ones say 6 o'clock. So anytime we have 00 on our digital clock, or we have our minute hand pointing right up to the top of the 12, we know that it's on the hour, and we say o'clock. So 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and so on. Okay? Now, let's go down to the first practice questions here. And it says, write the time. All right, so looking at that first clock here, we see that our minute hand is pointing straight up on the 12, so we know that we're at o'clock. And then our hour hand is pointing to the 3. So on the line, you can write 3 o'clock. Our digital clocks are a little bit easier to read. We have the 2 zeros here, so we know it's o'clock. And we have the number 10. So this clock says 10 o'clock. So right here you can write 10 and the words say o'clock. Jumping over to number 3, we have our minute hand is pointing straight up, so we know it's an o'clock. And our hour hand is pointing to the 8. So it is 8 o'clock. So you can put an 8 on the line. We'll go down to the next one. It says, trace the hands on the clock and write the time in 2 ways. Now, before you just start tracing them, if you want to use red for the short one and blue for the long one, you may. If you'd rather just use your pencil, you may. But make sure you're not just drawing the lines all the way to the ends of the clock. Make sure that your minute hand is the long one that stretches to the edge, and that your hour hand is the short one that only comes to the numbers. Okay, so here, they traced them. We were at the 4 o'clock. They wrote 4. That word says o'clock. And then on the digital one, it's 400, which means 4 o'clock. Okay? Taking a look at this next one, our minute hand is pointing straight up, so we know it's o'clock. Our hour hand, you can trace that, is pointing to the 9. So we're looking at 9 o'clock. You can put 9 here. And then on your digital clock, you write 900, 900 for 9 o'clock. Okay? And looking at number 6, we've got the 11 o'clock. So you can put 11 there, and then you put 1100 for 11 o'clock. Let's take a look at number 7. It says Aaron eats lunch on an hour that has the hour and the minute hands on the same number. So what time does Aaron eat lunch? Well, we know that for it to be on an hour, the minute hand has to be on the 12. And if his hour and minute hand are on the same number, then let me move my hour hand around here. If my hour and minute hand are both on the 12, then this clock says 12 o'clock. Okay, so Aaron eats lunch at 12 o'clock. Number 8 says, where are the minute and hour hands on a clock when it is 1 o'clock? Well, we know anytime it's o'clock, the minute hand is on the 12. And if it's 1 o'clock, then our hour hand would be on the 1. So this clock would say 1 o'clock. Okay? All right, now if you go to the top of the next page, this is just another review here on what 6 o'clock looks like on an analog and a digital clock. I want you to go through for these 3 and write down, this one they've done for you is 7 o'clock. You can write the time for 2 and 3. And then turn to the back of that page and do the same thing here. Write down what time you see on the analog clock and then the digital. The analog clock and then the digital. The analog clock and then the digital. Okay, go ahead and do that now. And then unpause the video and you can check your work. All right, to check your work for this one, they gave you 7. This one you should have 9 o'clock, and this one you should have 2 o'clock. On the top of the next page, this one is 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 600, which means 6 o'clock. This one is 11 o'clock, so you should have an 11 there, and then 1100 for 11 o'clock. And number 3 is 12 o'clock, so you should write 12 here, and then you should have 1200 for 12 o'clock. Looking at number 4, it says, when Alex leaves for school, the minute hand is on the 12. Okay, so we've got the minute hand on the 12, and the hour hand is on the 7. So let's move our hour hand to the 7. It says, what time does Alexis leave for school? Well, looking at this clock, if my minute hand is on the 12 and my hour hand is on the 7, it is 7 o'clock. So you can write here 7 o'clock. And number 5 says, how many hours and minutes are shown on the clock? Well, I see 10 hours, so that's 10, and I see 0 minutes. So it's 10 and 0. 10 hours, 0 minutes is 10 o'clock. All right, so boys and girls, that was our first lesson on telling time, and that is telling time to the hour. Whether it is a digital clock, which represents the hour with 2 zeros, or it is an analog clock, which represents the o'clock by pointing to the number right above the 12. As our hour hand moves around our clock, the hour changes from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, but as long as this long minute hand is directly on the 12, it is on the hour or o'clock. Okay, so have fun with that today. If you have an analog clock in your house, try to look at it periodically and see if you can tell what hour we're in. And then tomorrow we'll start talking about telling time to the half hour, which would be like when we say 2:30 or 3:30, but that's work for another day. See you later, boys and girls.